Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. Welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today we are going to be chatting about 10 eyeshadow palettes that I thought were very disappointing. And this video is part of eyeshadow palette week. Yes, I'm currently doing a full week of eyeshadow palette related content. So let's get to it. Welcome if you're new here. Welcome if you're a returning visitor. Thank you so very much for joining me today. I already mentioned it just now. Yes, I'm doing eyeshadow palette week. I thought after sort of skimping on a lot of eyeshadow palette content in March, because I was doing declutters then, that I could come on here and just do a video every single day about eyeshadow palettes. And I had all these ideas and I thought, let's just do it. So I'm pre-filming this a little bit in advance, so I'm not sure yet when this video exactly is gonna go live. But yeah, it's going to be 1 out of 7 eyeshadow palette related video, so I hope you enjoy that, because I love chatting about eyeshadow palettes. If you don't know about this channel, I love chatting about that. I also love trying new Essence and Catrice products whenever they do their updates, but I also love getting the use out of my products. And that's definitely, when I look at the pile of eyeshadow palettes that I've got going on here and why they didn't work for me, I mean, they're not bad. They're not bad. It's just things that once I tried them, I was like, yeah, I tried them. Would I ever want to go back to these? Not necessarily, and that very often has to do with the fact that I have fair skin. So welcome to the Snow Angel Club in case you would like to join. Because yeah, fair skin, cool to neutral undertone, and that means that not everything necessarily works for me. And then there are certain formulas that I just don't like. So let me chat to you about 10 eyeshadow palettes that I just didn't really get down with. Let's get started. As I already mentioned, I don't necessarily think these eyeshadow palettes are bad. Some of these are very hyped up and a lot of people love them. So if I'm saying something negatively about a palette you love, hey, it's only makeup. We can differ from opinion, it's fine. These are just mine. And this didn't work for me, as I already mentioned in my intro. I have fair skin, I have a cool to neutral undertone. I like makeup that is easy to blend. I love a shimmer over a matte. And those are all things that factor into why some of these palettes just weren't my favorite. So yeah, let's just get started with the first palette here. So if we then talk about the first palette I want to mention, this was already in my full face of disappointing products in March, and that is the Nabla Side by Side palette. And this palette got so much hype. It was also, when this launched, I remember just being super excited because I was like, oh, but this is such a great neutral eyeshadow palette. Until I tried it. And the reason why I ended up not loving this as much is because the only row that really appealed to me once I used it was the row with the reds, like the reddish tone browns. We don't get a lot of cool tones, save for some grays, which I have said many times, if you see my videos before, I wish brands would stop doing gray tones as the only cool tones that they put in palettes. Make them cool tone browns. Please, can we do that? If these would have been browns, I would have loved this palette so much more. So much more. But even with these reds, like I struggled making these blend very easily. There's just something about the undertone of these shades that doesn't really work with my undertone, and it really shows when I use the palette. Also, I felt that there were quite a few shades that, you know, were replaceable. And you're like, why did we get 2 of those? Like, I could have done without them, because on my fair skin, they just blend away into the same thing. So that was a shame. So also these like very neutral shades at the top just didn't really work for me. The most interesting shimmer, which is this one over here, I find very difficult to build up. It needs a lot of building and blending and finger action and foiling and the whole 9 yards for it to really show up. And it's pretty, but I feel that it really needs that base layer. Some of these shades are too red against my skin tone, so they really pull very sort of pinky red, and they can make my eyes look like I've got an eye infection. So overall, the way this palette came together just didn't work for me. I think if you have warm skin and you have medium, maybe olive to deep skin tone, this is going to be really, really lovely for you. Maybe if you're fair skinned and you have a warm undertone as well. But for me, the undertone of these shades combined with how it worked, it just didn't work on me. I didn't get the feels, and that's why it ended up in my declutter. Similarly, the Viseart Dark Edit, I really went onto a bit of a Viseart kick in 2021, and then I saw that Angelica Nykvist loves the Dark Edit, so I was like, maybe I might like it too. It only has 4 shimmers, so that's already one, like tick against it that it has, because it has 8 mattes, only 4 shimmers. I really like the shimmers in here, don't get me wrong. I like the formula in here too. But if I start using this, every look I did with it turned out looking the same. Yes, it's dark, but I think that that's exactly why this doesn't work for me. Because I am so fair and my eyes are quite deep set, all of these shades, especially this top row, just look identical on me. Like, really, like this looks like a navy in the pan. I use it, it looks like a black. Like, what's going on with that? And I have had that issue with palettes in the past where they are just too dark for me and all of the nuances in the different shades just disappear when I start using them with brushes, and that has to do with my eye shape and my coloring and all that. So for me, this just wasn't perfect, and I have for a hot minute just I was like umming and ahhing, like, shall I take some of these shades out and keep it around to use it with some of my other Viseart palettes? And I was like, I could, like, this navy could work really well in the Étoile palette, and some of these like purple shades I'm pretty sure I could still get some use out of. These 2 green tones I could still get some use out of. This is a nice transition shade, don't get me wrong, like, it's got good shades, it's just not a standalone palette for me, and that's why I decided to put it in this video. I also wanted to make sure I featured a palette that when you look at this, it just ticks so many boxes for what I want in an eyeshadow palette. And I'm talking about this one. This is the Catrice Pro Slim Lavender Breeze eyeshadow palette. You look at this and you may go like, wow, it's light, it's got those pastel shades, it has the lavenders. You are going to love this, Micah. And I tried this, and I really didn't enjoy this all that much. And the main reason for it isn't because it's not that lavender, it's more pink. When I use it, it pulls very pink. It's just a little bit too light for me. It has a severe lack of dimension. I think if you have an even fairer skin tone than I do, this may work for you. But I also found, because of how powdery this formula is, that these also blended away quite easily. I have found these Pro Slim palettes from Catrice to be quite inconsistent in the quality. There are really good ones in the line. Those are the ones I would recommend, but this one is also not the best quality compared to the other ones. Like this lavender shade, for instance, you can't really build up very easily. It just blends away into nothing really. This lavender shimmer, you can build up to full intensity, and then you do get something that approaches this in the pan. So it has a couple of really stunning shades for sure, but I just didn't really see myself going back to this, where the dark edit was too intense and too dark. This is a little bit too light and lackluster for what I want. Another palette that I was hoping to love, but then I got it home and I was like, oh, I think I made a bit of a mistake here. And that is the Tartelette Juicy from Tarte. I love the In Bloom. I quite enjoy my Tartelette Toasted as well. And I was hoping that this was like the pinky version of a combination of those two. That's what I was hoping. That's what this looked like to me when I saw this pictured online. But then I got it home and I was like, oh, save for the bottom row, I'm not really feeling it. Like, these pinks are so warm toned. And then this, especially these 2 shades, are just straight up oranges on my skin tone. So it's a bit of a clash. Can I still make these work? Yeah, I think I did pretty looks with this when I used it. And I think that if I combine this palette with the Tartelette Toasted, I can definitely make it work. But if I were to use this as a standalone, I would really only use the bottom row. That's pretty much it. So this, I'm not sure how long it's going to last in my makeup collection. I decided to hang on to it for now. I don't have that many pink shades, and I do really like the Tartelette formula. So I think that if I were to just go back to this and really sort of like do a 1 week with this and really commit to see if I can really make it work, because right now for trying out the palette I used each row individually, and I think it's really in how I mix and match these that I can still make this work. But yeah, this is just again a case of me being cool to neutral undertoned, this being very warm toned for the most part. that it doesn't always come together. I have to put in a little bit more effort, and with the amount of makeup I have, especially eyeshadow palettes, there are so many eyeshadow palettes I have that I don't have to put this effort into. If you have a warm undertone though, and you love your pinks, I think you're gonna love this. It's a good palette. It's a really good palette. It just isn't really for me. A palette that I decided to not even give a chance once I got home. This baby. This is the Profusion Wanderlust palette, and I had been wanting to try some Profusion ever since this brand really made a hype up on YouTube. A lot of people love them. I've now found out that most people love their smaller palettes more so than these large palettes. I bought mine from TK Maxx because it's the only place where I can buy this from. I believe they do have a UK website though. So I could potentially order them online, but again, they don't seem to have everything. I don't know. This brand kind of confuses me. But the Wanderlust palette I thought looked so fun. It reminds me a bit of the e.l.f. Earth and Ocean with some browns and then some brighter pops of pinks and purple. That's sort of what this was to me when I looked at it. And then I got it home and I opened it up and I smelled it, and this smells like chemical glue. It smells so terribly. And I don't love it when makeup smells badly or even too perfumey. Like, I just don't like scented makeup. And this smells like really cheap makeup. And then I swatched it and I was like, what? Everybody was hyping this up a couple of years ago. And I was like, well, I've tried much more affordable eyeshadows that I do like. If you find yourself a good Catrice eyeshadow, like the ones in the 5 in a box original lineup, if you try those, that's cheaper than these ones are, and I like those a lot better. So this, unfortunately, I decided to not even put to the test because I was like, no can do. This I don't even want to put in my eyes. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel like something I want to try. And I wish I had heard people who raved about this palette say, I love this palette, but it smells bad. Because then I would have not like gotten excited when I found this at TJ Maxx, going like, ooh, finally I find Profusion. This is great. It wasn't great. What also wasn't great, and this may sound a little bit petty, but this one, the It's Freakin' Bats palette from Betty Bean and Shroud. So I still have the packaging where it says Beauty Bean. She has changed her channel name since I bought mine. And for me, this isn't even about the shipping. I mean, if I add in the shipping, then yes. So this palette I bought upon release, and I didn't get it until like 6 months later. That was a whole thing, of course. They had completely underestimated how many people would want this, and they decided to just open it and then make and fill the orders as they went along, which the brand has learned from, so that's good. What really irked me about this one was that for me, the color story just didn't come together. And so for me, it's really in how the shades performed, not because these are bad shadows. They're not bad shadows. It's lovely quality. I love Shroud Cosmetics quality, but it's just not a standalone palette for me as well. So for me, the shades that you might think go together, like the purpley shades and the tealy bluey shades, and then these like greeny yellows, the undertones in the mattes and the shimmers just look completely off to me. Like if I put them on my eyes, they no longer go together. So if I blend this into the crease and then I want to use that all over the lid and maybe pop that teal in there, it just doesn't really come together for me. So I don't know why. I sort of kept this around so I can pull this into my Arcana palette, because that is quite deep and it doesn't always have all the options you would like. And I just feel that this nicely rounds that palette out a bit more, give you some lighter shades. And I really like the individual shimmers and the individual mattes in here. I mean, that periwinkle is just everything. Like this one here and that limey. Oh, it's so many stunning shades. But when I start putting them together, I don't know why. It just doesn't really go. And again, I have had this issue with another palette I will be showing you in a minute. But I have had this with palettes in the past where some of the shades, once I blend them out on my skin tone, they get a very murky, muddy undertone that means it doesn't go in anything anymore. So they lose some of the vibrancy that it seems to have in the pan. And I feel that that's the case with these palettes, with that palette as well, which is why it was a bit of a letdown for me, especially with how long I had to wait for it. And then next up, I wanted to make sure I showed you palettes I still have, that I still have in my collection, even though a lot of these have now been decluttered. I sort of kept my declutter pile around so I could film this video before I let my friends go through it. But there is one palette I wanted to mention that I no longer own, which is the Colourpop Blue Moon palette. And the reason why I wanted to mention this one in particular is because I also wanted to talk about Colourpop being incredibly hit or miss. With Colourpop, you can have palettes that do really well for you, and then for another person, they do absolutely nothing. And I have this theory with Colourpop, and I think that was the case with my Blue Moon, is that if you buy Colourpop upon release, you get better quality items than when you buy it in a restock. There just seems to be a lot of inconsistency in terms of quality between batches, how hard pressed things are, how things have been blended, whether the packaging is still like a-okay. I've not received anything come in such bad packaging as from Colourpop. So very often, like with some of the Super Shocks, the lids don't screw on properly. Like there's just not a lot of attention to detail when it comes to like quality control with Colourpop, which is why I think they can A, be very affordable, but also B, why they are not available in Europe, because I do know that when it comes to those kind of things in Europe, standards are a little bit differently than in the US. So I think that they don't sell in Europe because they would just have to up their quality control, which means they have to make the brand more expensive, which of course they're not willing to do. So yeah, with Colourpop's Blue Moon, I thought the mattes in this were just so lackluster. In the end, there was only one shade in the entire 9 pan that I wanted to keep around, and I popped it into my Smoke Show palette because that's that grayish blue in the middle called Mary Jane. And the rest of the palette I decluttered because it was like, I don't like the mattes. I don't like how the color story is built up. I mean, if it's a monochromatic 9 pan, I want all the shades to go together. And with a lot of the Colourpop monochromatic palettes, I had the issue that some of the shades would go together and then some of the other ones, but not all of them. So especially in the blue palette, I felt this was an issue because some of them were these like very vibrant, like sky blue shades, and then some of them were more like electric blue leaning. And for some reason, again, I think it has to do with my skin tone, they just didn't really blend together. So I couldn't use all of the mattes together. I couldn't use all of the shimmers with the different mattes. So for me, this color story just didn't really come together. Beauty Bay. I know that especially this palette got a lot of hype, but it's not just like this palette in particular. I have tried another Beauty Bay palette that I didn't love. So for me, I think it's more of a formula thing. And that's why I don't think, unless they really come out with a color story that speaks to my heart and really hits me in the feels, unless they do that, I know I will not be buying another Beauty Bay palette because I don't love their formula. I tried the pastels first. I think that was my first Beauty Bay palette. It's all matte and it was chalky. It didn't work on me. I'm not sure what was wrong with it. I see people doing stunning looks with it over on Instagram, but I tried wearing those shadows for an entire day and they fell off my eyes. So for me, the Beauty Bay Pastels palette was just a mess. And I feel similarly about the Wilderness palette. Actually, also the Age of Opulence, but this one was terrible for me. The reason for it being, again, my undertone. I had a really successful green look with this, but the blues and especially these reds, I'm just too light for this to work. Right, so I was saying my camera battery was down, so I had to replace that. So I do apologize if the angle has shifted, but I was telling you how these reds turn into pinks. This orange that looks nice and murky in the pan just looks like a bright orange on me. This mustardy yellow lost all of its mustardiness and it just looked like a bright yellow on me. So for me, it looks a lot more interesting in the pan than it did once I put this on my eyes. I struggled with blending these out because these are incredibly pigmented. They are so pigmented that they just lose all the blendability. And I know that at the moment, what is hyped up the most in the online beauty community is overly pigmented shadows. That's just what I'm going to call them. These are too pigmented. And I know that very often people will say that, ooh, it's not that pigmented, or I like my shadows to be buildable because I want to be able to take a fluffy brush and then go in with a couple of layers to really get this really pretty diffused look. That's what really works well with my eye shape. I have quite deep set eyes. I've got a slightly hooded eye. And I just, like, if you want to do like these really intense graphic eyeliner-y kind of looks, then this is of course going to be a palette for that kind of look. But if you want to diffuse something up towards the brow bone, these are just not the kind of shades that are going to give you that look. And even though I know that on camera and also when I take pictures of looks that I do, it looks like I don't bring my eyeshadow up high enough, but I'm not doing makeup for cameras. I'm doing makeup for real life. And in my case, even though it looks like I've got a lot of lid space left, this isn't lid space. That's my brow bone. Like this, like empty spot that you see, that's already my brow bone. That's already sticking out. If I stick eyeshadow there, it starts looking like I was punched in the face. So, especially with shades like this, especially if you like put this bright blue all the way up there, that's not really going to be very pretty. And plus, because like again, on camera, you kind of lose that dimension, but because that is sticking out so much, I can't really pull any of my shadow up towards it because the line gets distorted when I move around. So if I like close my eyes and I have a perfect line going in that direction, I open my eyes and the line is like crooked. So that's why I don't do those kind of looks on myself, because while they are possible, I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just that I can then just do an eyeliner. And I just like a more blended, soft, focused kind of look on myself. That's just what I like. I feel that with these shades, because they are so harsh and so difficult to blend, I find that it just looks too quickly like too much. And I know that that's what you like. If you are someone who loves doing looks for Instagram, this is your kind of palette. I just don't do that kind of makeup. And with a fluffy brush, I struggle with these. Like they got like, it was like they got stuck in certain places and then you try to blend it. Like these are the kind of shades you need to pack and then blend, and that's just not a makeup technique that I love going into. I liked some of the shimmers, like this shimmer was really nice and this one was really nice and this green was really pretty too. Like like these 5 greens, like if I could just keep those, I'd be very happy. But we get some more shades in this palette and it wasn't all that great for me. So for me, I know I will not be buying any more Beauty Bay palettes unless they do something really outstanding. And because the formula is just not my favorite. And that's also the case for this one. And since I spotted this mini one as well, and I feel the formula is the same, I thought I might as well chat about both of them. I will not be buying any more ABH Norvina palettes for myself, for sure. I just don't love the formula. I thought that when I bought this, yay, great, original color story. And then this is a pressed glitter and it wasn't disclosed on the packaging. I've mentioned it many times, but that's a huge pet peeve of mine. Just say it. Say that something is a pressed glitter, please. And don't just call it a textured shadow, because that's what they're doing. I was so livid because it looks like a really nice sparkly shade and you stick your finger in it and it's actually gritty and you need a glitter glue to stick it down. Same thing here. It says only 2 pressed glitters on the packaging, but I felt that these 2 were also too gritty to use by itself. You need a glitter glue to make it work. These also smell funky. These have that same weird chemically scent as the Profusion palette does. I don't know what's wrong with that. Plus these, like with the Beauty Bay, too pigmented for my liking, very difficult to blend. Even some of these more neutrally shades, like this taupe I thought was going to be my shade, and then I tried blending it out and I was like, this is not my cup of tea. So in the end, there just wasn't enough shimmer in this palette for me to really like it, because most of the shimmers that you get are just satins. There's not really anything metallic-y going on. So we just get a bunch of mattes with a couple of satins and then glitters. And I'm like, It's just not my cup of tea, even though I really like the look of this. Like, I look at this and I again go like, oh, so inspiring, great, fun, purples with pinks, but not too, and a bit more neutral. Like, that's why I like this, and that's why I bought it, but I really couldn't get down with the formula of this one, which is why I know I won't be trying any more ABH Norvina palettes. And my final most disappointing palette, the Glamlite Cake palette. This one was in my declutter last year, and I kept it around because, come on, how can we not? Like, I kept the box, I kept the oven, so we can just have a moment and we can stare at this from time to time. That's why I kept it around, but it's no longer counted as part of my makeup collection. But I was like, hey, I can still show you this, because there's a reason why I no longer use this in my makeup collection, because the cake palette from Glamlite, is nothing but a rainbow, which really is one of the least inspiring color stories to me by now. And I heard people saying how much they love this, and it was in so many people's favorite palette of 2022, like, rankings. A lot of people listed this as their top palette of 2020. And I just don't get it. The reason why I wanted this was because it had some fun, colorful shimmers. Oops. And those are exactly the shades that I feel are the most lackluster. These shimmers, really nice, but they are neutral shimmers. We can find those in every single palette. Like this shimmer, cinnamon, holy moly, stunning shimmer. But strawberry, lavender, and blueberry, 4 layers of this, and it still doesn't look as opaque as in the pan. 4 layers, 4. These bright shades, when I blended them out, muddied up, they looked very dirty on my skin tone, wasn't a good match. In the end, the shade I liked the most in here was this bright, orangey, vibrant coral shade called Peach. That was my favorite shade. And if you know how often I do these very vibrant, orangey kind of looks, then you know that this didn't warrant staying around my collection for a very long time. So yeah, I think if you like warm tones, you're gonna love this palette. But if you bought the palette for these like purpley, vibrant, bluey, green shades, which is why I bought the palette, that you may not like this as much. I was just incredibly let down with this formula, like with the Beauty Bay. Really, really pigmented shadows to the point where you can't blend them anymore. I will say it again, I prefer an eyeshadow formula that is sheer, buildable, but easy to use, that I just don't make any mistakes with. With this, it stuck down, and I really had to blend it all the way up to my brow bone for it to work, which was just such a shame, because for me, it just doesn't go with my eye shape, it doesn't go with my coloring. Again, if you love doing Instagram, TikTok-y kind of makeup with like these graphic, crazy liner kind of things that I see everybody doing, with lots of cutouts and cut creases, and you've got a lot of lid space, I'm sure this is going to work. But if, like me, you've got a brow that pretty much hangs over your entire lid and you have little space to work with, these just aren't really my vibe. So I have other rainbow palettes that I just prefer so much more than I do this, which is why this is one of my just one of the least favorite palettes I've ever tried. It just is. So if this is your favorite palette, then I do apologize, but that's just the way I feel. There you have it, that's it. Those were my 10 most disappointing eyeshadow palettes that I have ever tried. And this video, as I already mentioned, is part of Eyeshadow Palette Week. So I'm not sure yet when I will be posting this exactly, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be somewhere at the start or in the middle of that week. So I still have lots more eyeshadow palette content coming your way for sure. But also check out some of my other videos, because I do loads of other things here as well. So on average, it's like 3 or 4 videos a week. So I've got lots more content coming your way. So please subscribe if you like what I do here and support the channel. That would be lovely. And then I hope to see you in my next video. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.